Hello friends and welcome to my new video. Today I'll be talking about one of my favorite filmmakers and sharing with you my top 10 films made by him. The filmmaker is none other than Dario Argento, the Italian filmmaker, often referred to as the king of horror or the king of the thrillers, the master of Giallo. Now, Giallo is an Italian word. Giallo literally means yellow, the color yellow, but Giallo is used in the context of thrillers and horrors and psychological mysteries. And the reason for that is these novels originally were published by a cheap publication with a yellow cover. That's how the term Giallo became associated with thrillers and horror movies and slasher movies, etc. And whenever these movies are spoken about, whenever this genre is discussed, the name that comes out right on top is that of Dario Argento. He's a fantastic filmmaker, and he excelled in making these movies. And I think one of his trademark was, although he made slasher movies and horror and gory, violent thrillers, he made them very artistically. Every movie of his has an immense aesthetic appeal, has an immense artistic value. He almost took it to operatic levels. The violence and the gore and the chills that he depicted in his movies were almost taken to that level, and they were not crude or graphic just for the heck of being graphic kind of movies. There was a lot of artistic and aesthetic sense that Dario Argento imbibed, through his movies. So I like to talk about my 10 favorite Dario Argento movies, and without much ado, I'll start with my list. Again, like most of my lists, this is a subjective list, may differ from some other Dario Argento fans. And yes, this is in no particular order, it's just in random order. The first movie I want to talk about is this movie called Sleepless, made in 2001, and it was made after a while. This was, I wouldn't call it a comeback, but it was Dario Argento returning to form after a brief hiatus from movies. And this is about an insomniac detective who is assigned to the case of a serial killer who's copying old murders, and how this detective is chasing this killer and tries to nab him. That's what this movie is about. Sleepless. The next movie I want to talk about is it's a brilliant movie called Trauma, and I must add that it's not for the faint-hearted, and it's about this guy and a very kind-hearted guy and this girl who's run away from the hostel. The two of them pairing up to look for this killer who's called the headhunter by the media because his style of killing is decapitating his victims. So, as you can imagine, there is a lot of gore, there is a lot of shock value that this movie has, and it's a brilliant mystery. It's a brilliant mystery because there are again, true to Dario Argento's style. There are a few shocking twists and turns which are revealed towards the end of this movie. Trauma. The next film I want to talk about is another great film. This is again from the 80s. I think it's from 1985, and it's a movie called Inferno, and it's it's a shocker from Argento, as always expected, and it's about this brother and sister who are in two different locations, both hunting for a serial killer with almost identical murders. One takes place in New York and the other takes place in Rome, and it's about that, how the brother and sister go about solving this mystery. It's a superb movie, Inferno. The next movie I want to talk about is this movie called Tenebre. It was also called Unsane, not insane, but Unsane. And it's about this writer, this author who gets involved in the scheme of things when a serial killer starts a string of murders, and it's obvious from his style of murders that he's a great admirer of this author's work. So that's how he gets involved in finding this, hunting for this serial killer. That's what this movie is about. Tenebre, superb movie. The next movie is called Four Flies on Grey Velvet, and this one is made at a time when, personally, I feel Dario Argento was at his peak, the early 70s. That's when he did some of his work, which is my favorite. And I feel Dario Argento as a filmmaker was at his best in the early 70s. And this particular movie is about a rock drummer who gets involved, after witnessing a murder. He gets involved in the scheme of things, and his hunt and his attempt to find this maniacal killer who's on the loose. Another fantastic movie by Dario Argento. The one thing which I forgot to mention right at the start when I was talking about Dario Argento is his use of music in his films is absolutely fantastic. Almost every movie of his has a soundtrack which is fabulous, and his there is a very typical style of music. It's almost so identifiable with him as a filmmaker that even if you hear it outside a movie, you can visualize that this has been used in a Dario Argento movie. It's that it's so much identifiable, and most of the music given in his movies was by this progressive rock group called the Goblins, and the music in Dario Argento movies is absolutely superb. This is another one such example. Four Flies on Grey Velvet, great thriller, atmospheric, superb music, a superb movie overall. The next movie is from 1996. It's called the Stendhal Syndrome, and it's quite an unusual movie. Stendhal Syndrome actually means it's a medical condition where a person, after viewing or experiencing a very good work of art, gets into an elevated physiological condition. Heartbeat increases, and there are apparent hallucinations that the person undergoes. So it's that situation which is called the Stendhal Syndrome, and it's about this girl who suffers from it. She's a cop, and she's trying to chase this serial killer, this maniac who had also raped her in the past. And it's her hunt to catch this killer and bring him to book. and she suffers from this Stendhal syndrome. So it's quite an interesting movie. It's, I think, the first Italian movie to use CGI and computer generated images, and it stars Asia Argento, Dario's daughter, in the lead role of the cop, and it's a brilliant movie. Trademark Dario Argento film. The early 90s saw a change in movie making and a change in the style of movies coming out, and Dario Argento seemed to be a forgotten man, and he had sort of lost a lot of his sheen that he had in the 70s and 80s. So the 90s sort of had diminished that, but Stendhal Syndrome in 1996 changed all that. It brought him back in the limelight, and it's a superb movie. It's an absolute classic return to form by Dario Argento, Stendhal Syndrome. The next movie is actually the first Dario Argento movie I had seen. Before that, I really had not heard about him or known much about him. And this movie is called The Cat o' Nine Tails, and it's quite a fascinating movie, actually, about this newspaper reporter and a blind guy who solves puzzles, and the two of them teaming together to catch a serial killer. And the whole story is set with a backdrop of genetic research and espionage. And it was my first exposure to Dario Argento, and what an exposure it was. Fabulous background music, fabulous camera work, and it got me hooked for life. And I became an instant Dario Argento fan when I watched Cat o' Nine Tails. It's a superb movie. Do watch it. The next movie is again from 1970, and this is the movie which brought Dario Argento to the world stage, and international recognition was, this was the movie that brought him international recognition, and it's called Bird with the Crystal Plumage. It's a superb movie, and as I said, it's from that period where he was at his best. The 70s, where he was on top of his game. And this actually, there's this trilogy, Animal Trilogy, which is usually associated with Dario Argento, and Four Flies on Grey Velvet, Bird with Crystal Plumage, and Cat o' Nine Tails are usually called the Animal Trilogy of Dario Argento. Do see this movie. It's a fabulous movie. Again, all the usual trappings of a Dario Argento film. Great soundtrack, excellent camera work, some shocking twists and turns, and yes, it's a fabulous movie. Bird with the Crystal Plumage. The next film is also from the 70s, also from his absolutely top phase, and is called Suspiria. And it's a great movie. Again, of all his movies, I think this is the one which is shot so brilliantly. There is an absolute. It's almost, he takes violence and gore and shocks to an operatic level. He the way his camera moves, the way he uses music is absolutely. It's so artistic and it's so aesthetic, and you at times almost forget that you're watching a shocker and a horror movie. Suspiria is brilliant. It's about this girl who gets into a ballet troupe, a very prestigious European ballet troupe, And that's where her troubles start, because a string of murders start happening within the troupe, and she is sort of right in the center of each one of them. And how she deals with it, and how she gets out of it, and how the killer is eventually caught, is what Suspiria is about. Fabulous movie. Although I said that, this list is in no particular order, and it isn't. The last movie I want to talk about is, according to me, the greatest Dario Argento movie of all time, and hence I kept it right for the end. It's a movie from 1975 called Deep Red, and to me, everything that is quintessential Argento: camera work, music, atmosphere, shock value, twists and turns in the script, everything that Dario Argento stands for is in this movie at its best. It's a superb movie. It's an absolutely superb movie, and the movie is in terms of the synopsis, it's a psychic mind reader who senses the presence of a killer during a mind reading session, ends up being brutally murdered by the killer, and a musician happens to witness the murder from his apartment, and how he gets involved in trying to track down the killer is what the movie is about. This is if you have to see just one Dario Argento movie in your entire life, according to me, Deep Red is the one you should be watching. It's a fabulous movie, not to be missed. So these were my top 10 Dario Argento films. He's made quite a few others as well, but I think these 10 are the movies which one essentially needs to watch if one is interested in this genre. Dario Argento may not be everyone's cup of tea because of the kind of movies he makes, and especially given the amount of gore and shock that his movies usually have. But if you are a fan of thrillers and slasher movies and horror movies, Dario Argento is a must-watch. Fortunately, most of his movies are available on DVD, Blu-ray. Some of his movies are also available on YouTube. I'm not sure whether they are available on too many OTT channels, but you can definitely hunt for them on YouTube or some online streaming sites which will surely have his movies. But he's a great filmmaker. He's one of the modern greats, and for any cinema lover, a look at Dario Argento's works, I think, is a must. So just prepare yourself for some unimaginable horror and shock when you're seeing his movies for the first time. But also get ready to really be taken for a wonderful, wonderful ride. A superb filmmaker, Dario Argento. Do watch some of his movies if possible. That's all for this week. Until the next time, bye for now.